Thank you. You may be seated. Order, members. Does any member have a notice of a motion? The Honorable Hatton.
Honorable Chair, notice of a motion. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move a motion that the House notes that the 2015 trends in international mathematics and science study, the TIMSS, was released yesterday, in which it was revealed that South Africa was still one of the world's worst education systems. South Africa ranked second last out of 48 countries for grade 4 and grade 8 mathematics, and stone last for grade 8 science out of 38 countries. To make matters worse, the South African results are likely to be inflated because the grade 4 tests were written by grade 5 learners, and the grade 8 tests were written by grade 9 learners. I move that this House debates the impact of the deteriorating education system on the future of South Africa in an increasingly competitive international arena. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to the motion? It's a notice of a motion. Excuse my babalas. Is there any other member who has a notice of a motion? I don't see any hand. Is there any member who wishes to move a motion without a notice? Can you please capture all the names for me? Can I start with Honorable Mutara?
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move without notice that Council notes the sentencing of Itumeleng Telekwa and her lover Charles Monare to an effective life term in the South Gauteng High Court sitting in Palm Ridge for the abuse and brutal killing of their 4-year-old child, Neo Telekwa, in 2013. Further notes that little Neo Telekwa was viciously assaulted by a stepfather while her mother was away at work on the 30th of August 2013 in their shack in Rockville in Soweto. And her mother deliberately turned a blind eye to the persistent abuse and violence against little Neo for approximately a year until she was finally killed by her mother's lover, who used every trick to shield her abuse and violent lover from being arrested. And takes this opportunity to welcome the sentencing as a clear and decisive message to other parents who continue to shield perpetrators of violence against children that their days will also come. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any objection to the motion? Therefore, the motion is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. I have the Honorable Mokwili.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF for the House to note that the Office of the Chief Whip is failing to execute the responsibility assigned to it by the Constitution and rules that govern this Council. The Chief, in her capacity, is failing to communicate or assign members to committees and other responsibilities as required by the rules. Lately, there were allegations that she accused Honorable Pakis of trying to rape her. In numerous sittings of this House, we have experienced administrative and procedural flaws that her office has made. For an example, assigning Honorable Mampuru to be the duty whip while the member was absent in the House, passing wrong resolutions by taking whips on an international trip to India that was never communicated at any relevant platform. That on its own is a fruitless and wasteful expenditure of public funds. We therefore, as EFF, recommend that the disciplinary action against the Chief Whip be implemented as a matter of agency. I so move.
Honorable members, is there any objection to this motion? The motion has not been agreed to. I have the Honorable Tipia.
Honourable Chairperson, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes that the South African Revenue Service collected just more than R1 trillion in the 2015-16 financial year, which is 82.7 billion or 8.5% increase from the previous year. Further notes that the tax to gross domestic product ratio increased from 25.5% in 2014-15 to 26.2% in 2015-16, slightly below the peak of 26.4% achieved in the 27-08, just before the onset of the global recession. Also notes that SARS processed 99.9% of all returns electronically, assessing 92.4% of them within 3 seconds, with 93.28% of the refunds totaling 15.5 billion rand in tax refunds having been paid to taxpayers within 72 hours. And takes this opportunity to congratulate all South Africans for ensuring that their tax returns were filed on time. So move. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to the motion? There is no objection. Therefore, it is agreed to in terms of Section 65. The Honourable Esak.
Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move a motion without notice that, yet again, the Mpumalanga provincial government, failed to meet its targets for the expanded public works program for the 2015-16 financial year, failing to create much needed job opportunities. And I trust I'm protected, Chairperson.
You are protected.
Thank you. Unemployment in Mpumalanga is at a shocking 41.1%. 57,000 EPWP jobs were promised by the Mpumalanga government, but EPWP jobs decreased down to 25,340, even with an increased budget of 16 million rand in this last financial year. The EPWP program should and must benefit as many people as possible, instead of continuously being used for political patronage under the ANC. The Mpumalanga province should look to the comprehensive EPWP rollout in the DA-led Western Cape, where job allocations are done on a fair and transparent basis with an impartial EPWP jobs allocation database. I so move. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to the motion? The objection, therefore, the motion is not carried. Order. The Honourable Koni.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters for the House to note that this year marks the 7 years since Councillor Bramos Pakwe has been murdered in Rustenburg local municipality, that the murder came after Bramos handed a dossier that implicated the high-profile leaders of the ANC with corruption activities within the said municipality and the province of Northwest. The case was brought before court, and Mr. Volmarans and his bodyguard were later charged and sentenced accordingly. It must be noted that later they were both released after the appeal. Up to now, the provincial legislature and the leadership of ANC are so silent and reluctant to assist the Pakwe family to find closure on the matter. They even pushed the children of the deceased be released or fired from their employment as they were working as officials in Rustenburg and Vryburg municipalities. They even forced that the house that they are staying in be repossessed. We therefore recommend that the House assist the Pakwe family in whatever they could. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any objection to this motion? It's been objected to. The Honourable Order, the Honourable Klimbi. Honourable Klimbi.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the ANC, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with great disgust that 3 women were rescued from a house in Castro, Johannesburg, where they were held against their will and tortured after they fell victim to a scam. Further notes that police received information about kidnapping and arrived at the abandoned house in the suburb around 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening and rescued 3 women and arrested 8 men. The women were sustained burn wounds, and it appeared they were tied up. Also notes that the women were apparently approached at a small and fell victim to a black dollar scam that involves the victim giving money to the scammer with the promise that they will get it back, multiplied several times. And at the same point, the women were kidnapped and taken to the house. And notes that this case was breakthrough as it fell with the 16 days of activism for the violence against women and children, and takes this opportunity to applaud the police on their dedication in fighting crime and save lives. I so move, Chairperson.
Honorable Klimbi, you were right. I was about to tell you your time was expired. Honorable members, is there any objection to this motion? None. Therefore, it is carried in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Honorable Shabangu.
Chair, I rise on behalf of EFF to move without notice that the House take note that the Free State people, in particular former homeland Kwakwa, people in surrounding towns like Harrismith and Kessel have been waiting for far too long for the land which was taken from their forefathers by the regime in the 1860s to be given back to them in a form of compensation, like other tribes which were given back what is due to them in a form of money or land. I further move that people have died with the hope that they would be paid what is due to them. I therefore urge the present reigning government to speed up the matter. Otherwise, people should do to ANC what Tata Mandela said they should do to ANC if it does not the same as apartheid has done to them. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to this motion? Motion not carried. The Honorable Makue.
Chairperson, on behalf of the African National Congress,
Your mic is not on, Honorable Makue.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council notes with great sense of shock and sadness the fatal crash of a Brazilian aeroplane in Colombia. Further notes that the aeroplane was carrying more than 76 passengers from a Brazilian national soccer team. Acknowledges that this tragedy represents a blow not only to the sports-loving nation of Brazil, but the entire international community, and takes this opportunity to join the international community in expressing our heartfelt condolences to the people of Brazil during these trying and difficult times. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to this motion? No objection. The motion is carried in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Members, I have exhausted, the Honorable Zwane. Honorable Zwane.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the African National Congress without notice that Council 1 notes with pride the relative success that continues to characterize the writing of final examinations in most institutions of higher education, especially universities and colleges. 2, that the Council further notes that despite difficulties and challenges associated with the recent disruptions of learning in our higher education institutions, the majority of students have demonstrated a resolute will and courage to write their final examinations. 3, that Council takes this opportunity to salute the university management, student leadership in various institutions of higher learning, parents, and other sectors of civil society for their steadfastness of principle and visionary leadership. And 4thly and finally, Council calls on the Department of Higher Education to take all necessary steps to create a conducive environment for learning and tuition in the year 2017. I will so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any objection to this motion? There is an objection, therefore the motion is not carried. The Honorable Chetty.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I move the following motion without notice. That this House recognizes and compliments the South African Police Services in KwaZulu-Natal for the arrest of 2 SASSA officials and the Bombay Civic Center officers for defrauding the community and denying the poorest of the poor much-needed grant funding. The DA has previously laid complaints regarding the abuse of SASSA food vouchers at the Bombay Civic Center officers during government elections. This House calls on the Minister of Social Development to brief the Select Committee on Social Services on what measures she is implementing to ensure that this fraud does not occur in other SASSA centers, and that this House calls on the Minister of Police to brief the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the progress of Operation Project Granny, which commenced in August this year. I so move.
Thank you, sir. Is there any objection to this motion? Is there any objection to this motion? Therefore, the motion is not carried. The Honorable Dlamini. Order.
Chair, protection, they are calling us voting cows.
You are protected, ma'am. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that Council notes that today is a day before the World AIDS Day, and for the first time in 7 years, the scientific community is embarking on a large-scale clinical trial of an HIV vaccine, the product of years of study and experimentation, by launching a major study to test the efficacy of the vaccine to prevent HIV infection by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases funded HIV Vaccine Trials Network. Further notes that the large-scale early-stage HIV vaccine clinical trial aims to determine if an investigational HIV vaccine regime is safe and tolerable, effective in preventing HIV infection among South African adults, and it takes this opportunity to join the rest of the global community in observing World AIDS Day and the launch of the HIV vaccine trial as a major step in the fight against the HIV and AIDS scourge in our country. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any objection to this motion? There is an objection. The motion is not carried. Is there any other member who has a motion without notice? Honorable Mhai.
Honorable Chair, for me, it's not a motion without notice. I wanted to ask the Chair for her indulgence on a motion that was raised earlier.
Okay.
Notwithstanding that the motion was objected to, but in my view that the statement that makes serious allegation against another member in the House, I want to ask the Chair, how do we deal with such statements, particularly in the light that the rules enjoins are such, if there are such statements or allegations, they can be brought to the attention of the presiding officer for necessary investigation. So please, Chair, if possible, I would request that we have a manner of dealing with such statements or motions that cast aspersions against another member.
Thank you, Honorable. The matter referred to in the motion you are quoting has come to our attention. It was brought to our attention by the Honorable Pakis after the sitting we had in the Eastern Cape. We are giving it proper attention. In fact, during the course of today, I will be referring the same matter to the relevant structures for investigation and conclusion. Honorable Mampuru, were you on a motion without notice? Please.
On behalf of the mighty African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council knows with utmost concern and apprehensiveness of the admission made by a principal who owns the Johannesburg High School that he had been sleeping with the 17-year-old grade 11 pupil who is a learner at the school. Further notes that despite the age of the learner, the principal claims that the learner seduced him and that he wanted to stop her from sleeping with other men. And take this opportunity to condemn in the strongest possible terms this incident and the continued emotional and sexual exploitation of learners in our schools. And lastly, calls on the Department of Education and the South African Council of Educators to ensure that the principal is suspended from teaching with immediate effect. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any objection to this motion? And order, order. 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 There is an objection. The motion is not carried. Honorable member, I don't have any other hand. Honorable Mukweli, is there any other hand after Honorable Mukweli? Honorable Mukweli, you are the last hand.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF for the House to note the continuing inequality and poverty in South Africa 20 years after democracy. Further notes that apartheid, economic and racial discrimination were based on, amongst other things, jobs, reservation, and cheap labor of black people in general. Acknowledges that the wage continued to serve as a source of perpetuating dehumanization of the majority of our people, blacks in particular, including in the professional sector. Further notes that South African wages have remained stagnant, with the medium-low wage increasing by only 2.9% between 1997 and 2013. Recognize that more than 60% of South African blacks are paid less than 3,000 per month. Introduction of 3,500 as minimum wage would not change any life, as the increase of 500 would not put any bread on the table of the domestic worker, security officer, or a gardener, as things are expensive and unaffordable. We therefore call upon Parliament to re-evaluate the implementation of these minimum wages, taking into consideration socio-economic conditions of the majority of our people. I so move.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, is there any objection to this motion? Motion objected to? Honorable members, we now come to the motion on the order paper as printed in the name of the Chief Whip. Chief Whip.
Chairperson of this opportunity. Our draft resolution reads as follows: that Rule 239 subsection 1, which provides inter alia that the consideration of a bill may not commence before at least 3 working days have lapsed since the committee's report was tabled, be suspended for the purposes of consideration of the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill B15 of 2016, National Assembly Section 76 Bill. I move accordingly, Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. There is no speaker's list. I shall proceed to put the question. And the question is that the motion be agreed to. As the decision is dealt with in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution, I shall first ascertain whether all delegation heads are present in the chamber. Are all delegation heads present? Are all delegation heads present in the House? Thank you. I shall then, members, there are adults in this House. Can we please behave? In terms of Rule 71, I shall allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of the votes if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration? I don't see any hand. Therefore, I shall proceed to put the question to the vote, and I shall do this in alphabetical order. Those that are in favor will vote. Those who are against will say, and those who abstain will hit the abstain button. The Eastern Cape.
Thank you, Chair. The Eastern Cape doesn't have a mandate. Thank you.
The Free State, we are on the motion of the Chief Whip. The Free State?
Thanks, Chair. Free State vote in favor.
Gauteng?
Gauteng agrees.
KwaZulu-Natal?
KwaZulu-Natal agrees.
Thank you. Limpopo?
Limpopo e dumela apere go modulasetulo.
Mpumalanga?
Mpumalanga agrees, Chair.
Northern Cape? The Northwest?
We accept, Chair.
The Western Cape?
Die Weskaap stem saam.
Thank you, ma'am. 9 provinces have voted order. 9 provinces have voted. 1 province says it does not have a mandate. Therefore, order, Honorable Mukweli. Therefore, the question has been agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Will the Secretary please read the first order of the day?
Consideration of Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, Bill 15 of 2016, and report of Select Committee on Appropriations thereon.
Thank you. Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. The rest of the world is celebrating one of the greatest revolutionaries of the 20th century. What makes him great is that in the 20th century and into the 21st century, he was the biggest inspiration in the struggles of the oppressed and the poor against global capitalism for a just and equal society. Comrade Fidel taught us that international solidarity is indispensable to build world order that puts the interest of the majority who are poor first, and also that independence of small countries in pursuing their own socio-economic models is possible and is the only sustainable way. Chairperson, the 2016 Division of Revenue Amendment Bill report is tabled at a time when the country is going through credit rating review process by major credit rating agencies. The committee, however, welcomes the decision by 2 major credit rating agencies, Fitch and Moody's, to keep the country's credit rating unchanged. This provides a window to build confidence and improve economic prospects for the next review. The decision by these credit rating agencies further has a potential to boost investors' confidence in our country. Once more, as a committee, we wish to congratulate the democratic government and in particular the Minister of Finance and his deputy for their job well done. 2016 Division of Revenue Amendment Bill was tabled in Parliament on 26 October 2016 by the Minister of Finance during the presentation of the 2016 medium-term budget policy statement and was referred to the committee on the 22nd November 2016 for consideration and report. The committee received a briefing on the bill from National Treasury and also had submissions from South African Local Government Association and the Financial Fiscal Commission. The committee also received inputs from Parliamentary Budget Office. To facilitate public participation, the committee published adverts in print media in all 11 languages from 28 to 31st of October 2016. Submission was received from Rural Health Advocacy Project. In view of the fact that this is a Section 76, Section 2 bill, the committee in processing the bill had to comply with Section 7B of the mandating procedure of the Provinces Act, Act 52 of 2008. For this purpose, members of the committee were released to provide briefings to their respective provinces. This was followed by the submissions for negotiating as well as final mandates from provinces. The bill provides for changes in the equitable shared division of nationally raised revenue among the sphere of government, adjustments to provincial allocations, adjustments to local government allocations, and changes to conditional grant frameworks. Revisions to the 2016-17 main budget allocations to the national government resulted into a total decrease of 5.4 billion. This includes revised allocations of 1.9 billion to national departments. Provinces, however, continue to face funding challenges over the MTEF period, mainly as a result of 2015 public sector wage settlement, which increased compensation costs above budgeted amounts. In addition, fiscal consolidation and reprioritization affects all spheres of government. Selected revisions to the Division of Revenue Bill include an additional amount of 212 million were allocated to a new indirect component of Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program. This will enable the National Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to provide relief to farmers affected by ongoing drought. This relief to farmers will go a long way in strengthening food security and agricultural competitiveness as envisaged by National Development Plan. The National Development Plan initiatives to sustain and accelerate improvements to school performance include the investment in school buildings and maintenance, to address backlogs, replace inappropriate buildings, and meet minimum standards to sanitation and school facilities. For this reason, an amount of 177.1 million has been allocated to the Education Infrastructure Grant for the rehabilitation of damaged school infrastructure. The funds will also be used to provide mobile classrooms while damaged school infrastructure is being rehabilitated. In addition, to an amount of 53.6 million has been added to the National School Nutrition Program grant in order to cover the shortfall caused by high inflation of food prices. Within the local sphere of government, the allocation for indirect water service infrastructure grant increased by 50.6 million in the 2016 and 17 financial year to fund the provision of emergency water supplies to drought-affected communities, including providing water tankers and storage tanks. On the other hand, the allocation of the bucket eradication program grant is increased by 72 million to allow the Department of Water and Sanitation to complete bucket eradication projects that the department has already identified and committed to implement. Madam Chairperson, as already indicated in processing the bill, the committee received valuable inputs from various stakeholders, including provinces. The committee has made some recommendations and acknowledges the financial pressures faced in provinces. The committee will ensure that some of the matters raised form part of its continuous discussions during the budget process as well as during its oversight work. I must indicate, honorable members, that members of the committee engage in constructive, robust discussions above narrow party political affiliation, and all members of the committee were satisfied that the proposed amendments are reasonable and there was no grandstanding, and that they are justified and support the bill without any amendments. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question is that the bill be agreed to. Do you want to come in now?
I want to raise a point of order, yes.
It's a point of order. Please proceed, ma'am.
Chairperson, I wrote to you and I received a reply to your letter according to the process and the procedures of this bill. Today, I received the answer today, and thank you for that. I just want to note to this House that our obligation, our concerns about the bill, that there were not final mandates for 4 provinces, and in your letter you refer that they have voting mandates, but the process has not been followed, and one of the provinces didn't even have a final mandate, and that we are concerned about the processes that has been followed, and we just want the House to take notice of that. This was addressed in the committee, but the committee still continued with the process as is. And the process was not followed due to the fact that the time limits were limited, as the bill was not passed on the original date in the NA. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I did receive a letter from the Honorable Labuskaghni yesterday, which outlined the issues she is outlining now. Honorable members, in terms of Joint Rule 159.2 of the Joint Rules, the chairperson is required to refer a draft bill before introduction to the relevant select committee and the provincial legislatures to enable them, among others, to acquaint themselves with the contents of the bill and to develop their positions thereon. Now, at any stage after the introduction of the bill, members of the public, not just members of parliament, members of the public may comment on the bill. To put it simply, once Pravin Gordhan, the Honorable Minister, has introduced the bill there, it is free for all across the world on that. Now, a provincial legislature may, however, not commence formal consideration of any bill until it has been properly referred to the provincial legislature. Depending on the house of introduction, formal consideration may only commence after the bill has been transmitted to the next house. In other words, in this particular bill, the formal consideration by the provincial legislature could only happen after we ourselves had received the bill, after it was dealt with by the NA, and I had formally referred it to the provinces. And that thing has been done. Now, this bill has followed that route. Once it had passed through the National Assembly, the bill was formally transmitted, not only, honorable members, to the provincial legislatures, but also to SALGA. Now, the question here is whether a validly conferred mandate is not valid merely because a provincial legislature was not briefed on a bill. Now, in terms of the Act, all the provincial legislatures is required to do is to demonstrate that it has validly conferred a mandate. The Act does not provide for the negotiating mandate as a prerequisite for a final mandate. It requires merely that the provincial legislature at a relevant stage confer such a relevant mandate. A mandate will be valid for as long as it was validly conferred to in compliance with the requirements of the Act. In other words, after we have transmitted, did the legislature confer? Did the legislature have public hearings? Did the legislature transmit to us their final mandate? Did it have a negotiating mandate? And perhaps, Honorable Labuskaghni, the question is, what is the difference between a negotiating mandate and the final mandate? And whether a negotiating mandate is therefore a prerequisite and qualifies the final mandate of a province. I wish to say that it's very open. A negotiating mandate should enable the provincial delegations and provinces to have in simple English, I am open, you can convince me, but I'm also going to convince you. That's what we understand a negotiating mandate to be. The final mandate should be what worries us if a province does not have a final mandate. I want to say that as we were deciding on this question, we had only one province that says it was not given a mandate. And therefore, I would want to submit, Honorable Labuskaghni, that the points you raise are valid, must be taken into consideration, but also they take us back to a question we have been considering, and have not actually gone back to. It is whether or not we have enough space to consider money bills with the provisions of the Act as they are. So I think that we should, as the NCOP, continuously be alive to the challenges that we have, because we might want to take the latitude and say we want to drag this process over. But again, the same Act puts us in prison because it says by such and such a period you must have passed. So I want to say that I take what you are saying, ma'am. I try to deal with the matter. I'm hoping that in the committees, honorable members are busy at trying to convince one another to deal with this as honestly as possible, but to also be able to convince and be convinced on this matter. If you agree, ma'am, I would like to then proceed with the business. And that is that we go in terms of Rule 71 to allow the provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of the vote if they so wish. Is there any province, the Western Cape? Any other province? Gauteng, Free State?
Honorable Chairperson, thank you. You addressed the House on some of the concerns that was raised by the Honorable Labuskaghni. Honorable Chairperson, the Western Cape Province have a number of procedural concerns with this bill. There was insufficient time for briefings and public hearings in the provinces, and most of which commenced were procedurally flawed and or lacked meaningful public participation. 4 negotiating mandates were not procedurally compliant and 2 outstanding. Further, the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature did not submit their final mandate before the Select Committee commenced yesterday. Twice we appealed to the Chairperson of the NCOP that we be provided with a legal opinion on the procedural problems that have occurred throughout this process. This did not occur. Further, we have a number of concerns with the content of this bill, including the national allocation with this adjustment has now been adjusted downward from 855 billion to 849.6 billion, down by 5.4 billion. Reductions in the allocations for the bucket eradication grant in some municipalities are going to have huge ramifications as this is crucial or critical. Many municipalities continue to be in financial distress and are still not able to service their Eskom accounts. The Minister has alluded to the fact that there will be extra cuts to government spending growth of 26 billion in the two next financial years, which effectively means less money for national, provincial, and local governments, which will affect service delivery to our communities. Cadre deployment, jobs for PELs in local municipalities continue costing the taxpayers year on year. It needs to be made clear that while the Western Cape Province spends its previous budget in a responsible manner that focuses on service delivery for the poorest of its communities, which is why we will be supporting this bill. This does not occur in all other provinces. There remains no doubt that this country under the ANC government is heading towards a fiscal cliff. The Western Cape is committed to service delivery and a corruption-free government. We aim to continue delivering on a clean government with our budget allocation, and therefore, the Western Cape supports this bill. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. Gauteng.
Thank you, Chairperson. The DORA's main purpose is to
Order,
adjust
members.
the allocation to provinces and
Order.
municipalities. The schedule also addresses the following changes. Number one, it adjusts the equitable share of the national sphere of government. And two, changes to conditional grants to provinces and municipalities. And three, changes to gazetted frameworks. It is worth noting, Chairperson, that only equitable share of the national sphere of government was adjusted. Equitable share for the local and provincial spheres of government remains unchanged. The world economy and politics is in a state of fluctuations, characterized by high levels of uncertainty. South Africa, being part of the global village, is not immune to these conditions. The medium-term budget policy statement was presented at a time when South Africa is undergoing a difficult economic transition. The economic growth estimate for 2016 has been revised down to 0.5% from 0.9%, and National Treasury predicts a moderate recovery over the next 3 years, with GDP growth reaching 2.2% in 2019. Gauteng was in favor of the bill, however, raised the following issues. Number one, that National Treasury ensures that there is value for money for public resources exceeding 1 trillion rand per year. That National Treasury should avoid the low growth trap through its engagements with the Reserve Bank by ensuring that fiscal and monetary policy are supportive of economic recovery. Three, that National Treasury in its allocations of conditional grants to municipalities ensures that the Rand West City local municipality is financially provided for to guarantee a seamless merger of the Randfontein and Western Area local municipalities. This as a result of lessons learned with the merger of the former Mitsweding municipality into the Tshwane Metropolitan. And that National Treasury assists the Gauteng Department of Health in recouping monies owed to it by other provincial and national departments. And lastly, that National Treasury facilitates that interprovincial debt is paid within the same financial year the debt was incurred. With these issues raised, Gauteng votes in favor of the bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. The Free State.
Chair, as Free State, we support this bill, but we want to raise few issues or the basis of our support, because it's a huge resource that supports infrastructure in our communities. It's a resource that need to deal in the Free State with budget eradication. It's a resource that's supposed to deal with drought, and we believe that the level of our work on rural development will be seriously affected by the drought in our province. The issues that relates to education. Education, we believe that is a heartbeat of our development and the heartbeat of our revolution, and we need to deploy reasonable resources for education. Now, we believe, Chair, that integrated society is a main issue that we need to deal with. Therefore, the infrastructure development in our communities becomes very central for the development of our society. We are exponent and fervent exponent of democratic accountability by officials and authorities that are deployed and responsible in positions of power and authority to handle and deal with these resources that are meant to benefit our people. Say support us.
Thank you, sir. KwaZulu-Natal, Honorable Nzimande.
Yeah, we thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The province of KwaZulu-Natal raised in its processing of the bill issues that you ably dealt with in providing clarity on, and communique has been sent to, I think, to your office as well as to as well as to the chair of the appropriation. The response received from the committee in response to this concern helped to provide the basis amongst many of the support of the commitment of the committee to put in its program the processes that will start to look into the long discussed and awaited amendments to the bill. Furthermore, Honorable Chairperson, the division of the adjusted amounts to the province, particularly on the rollover on the road maintenance for the province, would help us to deal with the continuous challenges on the road networks in the province. We also, Chair, the money received and adjusted to deal with agriculture and the new school nutrition in the province would go a long way in helping the province to meet the backlog and to continue to provide service to the poor people of the province. We also, Chair, take note of the fact that part of the issues we are raising at the Budget Council include the unfunded mandates that sometimes provinces incur, which include, for instance, the money that we need to resolve the issue of paying the indunas, the money that we also need, Chair, to ensure that, we also thank the money that we've received as an adjustment funds to the NHI program, Chair, because this goes a long way in dealing with the issue of HIV and AIDS. Therefore, Chair, the adjustment indeed is positive for the province in helping it to deal with issues that pertains to the backlog to services. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Northwest.
No, thank you, Honorable Chair. I need to confirm that the Northwest Province was duly briefed on the 16th. And on the 24th of November, the provincial executive legislature met and gave us the final mandate. And on the 16th, there were public hearings in the Northwest Province, of which I also attended. Therefore, all processes were followed, all the legal aspects were covered. There was nothing illegal, even at the level of the committee. We dealt with issues in terms of the law as we are a legal entity. Now, Chairperson, one area that I think needs an emphasis is the fact that the Northwest Province is quite a rural province, and one area that has been a hindrance in terms of the province has been water. And the area where I come from, Mamusa, has been hindered by the shortage of water. People have been going for days without water, and we are happy to announce that the people of Mamusa have been budgeted 3.4 million for purposes of water supply, and that is a very good step and in the right direction to address issues that affects our people. Chairperson, I am also happy to announce that there's an amount, because young people would always go astray and end up doing wrong things, that there is an amount of 5 million for the wonderful town of Mamusa and Swazrenek that has been allocated for a new sports ground, and that is a positive development. There is also an amount of 585 million that has been allocated to the Northwest in terms of human settlement and addressing the issue of issues of having our people housed in mines. That issue has been addressed, and we are happy that the bill addresses such issues. We are also happy to announce, Chairperson, that 402.7 million has been allocated for school nutrition program.
Honorable Esak. Honorable Mutlashupin, take a seat. Honorable Esak.
Honorable Chairperson, yes, thank you for the point of order that you've taken. With due respect to my colleague who sits with me on the Select Committee for Finance, through you, all these details that he's spelling out to the House are all printed in detailed format in the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. So I don't know what is he wasting the time of the House. With due respect, ma'am, it's in the Division of Revenue Bill, and for everybody it is...
Order, members.
It is on the website, and it is national, it's there for national consumption. He's wasting the time of the House, with due respect, Chairperson. And
Thank you, Honorable
Esak.
Esak. Honorable order, members. Honorable members, order. Honorable Esak. Honorable Esak, that was not a point of order. Honorable members, declarations enable members to say whatever they want to say on whatever matter is in front of them. It is a mini debate, and therefore anything goes. Please continue, Honorable Mutlashuping. Honorable Mutlashuping.
I know, Chair, that Honorable Esak is always out of order and irrelevant. All the townships in terms of addressing issues of water in the Northwest. Yoketleng, Moses Kotane, Ratlo, Utswai.
Honorable Mutlashuping, you should not have wasted your time in responding to Honorable Esak, because now your time has expired. You have only 3 minutes to make...
Thanks, Chair, but the Northwest supports the bill.
The Northern Cape.
Honorable Chairperson, the Division of Revenue is based...
Order! Mutlashuping.
Is based on the sound fiscal policy followed by the ANC-led government since 1994. Economic growth will lead to more revenue collected, which will result in more funds that can be divided to address more set priorities. Referring to the Northern Cape municipalities, Honorable Chairperson, there was an allocation in the bill of 135.3 million rand, and of that money is allocated for bucket eradication. Why? To improve the dignity of our people. 25 million for drought relief. 2.1 million for the school nutrition scheme. But Chair, the Northern Cape is grateful for these allocations. And lastly, the Northern Cape province followed the set procedure to process the bill as full. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Honorable members, is there any other province which wishes to make a declaration? None. Thank you very much. I shall then proceed to the voting on the question, and I shall do this in alphabetical order per province, and heads of delegation will vote. The Eastern Cape has already told us, honorable members, that they do not have a mandate. Therefore, we shall not take much of their time. We will proceed to the Free State.
Ke a leboha modulasetulo wa Free State, re a e amohela.
Gauteng,
Gauteng supports the bill.
KwaZulu-Natal,
KwaZulu-Natal supports the bill.
Limpopo,
Limpopo supports the bill, Chairperson.
Mpumalanga,
Mpumalanga agrees to the bill, Chair.
Northern Cape,
Northern Cape supports the bill, Chair.
Northwest,
We support the bill, Chair.
Western Cape.
Supports the bill.
Thank you, honorable members. 8 provinces have voted in favor, and therefore the bill has been agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable members, we now come to the oration of condolences to the former President of Cuba, His Excellency Fidel Castro, under the theme, Farewell to a Great Revolutionary and an Indomitable Leader of the Cuban Revolution and the Global Struggle Against Imperialism. I have the honor to call I've just misplaced my speakers list. Thank you very much. I have the honor to invite the Honorable Mutara.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, special delegates, ladies and gentlemen. A fierce and ferocious giant and an indomitable leader of the Cuban Revolution and global struggle against imperialism, the former President and Prime Minister of Cuba, Commandant Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz, has evaded our eyes. As the African National Congress, we join the people of Cuba in mourning the loss of a formidable and legendary revolutionary whose name will forever remain engraved in our hearts and the history of our struggle for freedom and democracy. Honorable Chairperson, Commandant Castro was an ultimate revolutionary who was fully aware of his essential historic leadership in the revolution amongst the international community. Just as important was his guidance in building both the Communist Party as well as the socialist revolution in the world. He continued to inspire people who would fight no matter the adversities. Together with his counterparts, being Ernesto Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos, amongst others. Comrade Castro's determination and victory over American imperialism helped revive socialism in Latin America and across the globe. Many national liberation struggles in Latin America, Africa, and Asia gained strength from the assistance of the revolutionary Cuba. When Africa was being scrambled for her resources, Cuba took sides with the liberation movements. Cuba's involvement in Africa went beyond the ideological standoff between right and left to a real helping hand, sending soldiers, doctors, and teachers when post-colonial Africa was at its most vulnerable historical epoch, and still continues to do so to this day. It was perhaps Cuba's willingness to fight side by side with Africans that made Commandant Castro such a towering figure and an embodiment of the struggle for freedom and liberation on the continent. In 1975, as Angola gained independence from Portugal, it was Cuba who offered a safe haven to the then liberation movements hunted in their own countries. The African National Congress and Namibia Southwest People's Organization, as well as Mkhonto weSizwe, are some of the organizations that were housed in Angola. When the South African apartheid government, aided by the United States of America, cowardly and viciously attacked Angola, it was Commandant Castro who came to the rescue of the people of Angola. He sent troops and succeeded in pushing the South African soldiers back, while at the same time training African fighters to defend their border, as well as supplying military equipment against imperialism. Honorable Chairperson, it is true that many factors have led to the demise of apartheid, including courage of the people of South Africa and the worldwide movement to impose sanctions against South Africa. But it is without any doubt that the defeat of the South African army by the joint MPLA and later FAPLA and the Cuban forces in the Battle of Cuito Carnaval played a major role. It brought the border war to an end and led to the peace negotiations that saw the withdrawal of SADF, Mkhonto weSizwe, and the Cuban forces from Angola and Namibia, and led to the independence of Namibia. This is this as illustrated in the UN resolution on the withdrawal of the liberation armies from Angola and for the freedom of Namibia, which began the negotiating process towards our own freedom. Mam Gertrude Shope, who was one such woman, who was such an outstanding MK commander, was one such woman who fought in this battle. This is clearly illustrated as well in the words of our own former Commander-in-Chief and President Nelson Mandela on his visit to Cuba in 1991 when he said, and I quote, "We only came here with a sense of great debt that is owed to the people of Cuba. What other country point to a record of greater selflessness than Cuba has displayed in its relations to Africa?" Close quote. I am one of the countless millions who drew inspiration from Commandant Castro's formidable life. My very first political action, the first thing I ever did that involved an issue or a policy or politics, was to learn about the role of Cuba in aiding the revolution throughout the world and the struggle for freedom and democracy in our country. Like so many around the globe, I cannot fully imagine life without the example that Commandant Castro set, and so long as I live, I will do what I can to continue to draw inspiration from the courageous life he lived and the people of Cuba. I am in no doubt that South Africa today would not be free had it not been without the role that the Cubans had played in our own, sacrificing their own for the likes of our African people. Therefore, allow me, Honorable Chairperson, to take this moment to convey our profound and heartfelt condolences to the people of Cuba for their immense loss. As the ANC, the people of South Africa, and the African continent, we mourn together with the people of Cuba for the loss of an illustrious giant and one of the most outstanding revolutionaries in history. As he once declared, and I quote when he said, "I am a Marxist-Leninist, and I will be one until the last day of my life." Close quote. May this great Marxist-Leninist rest in peace. A luta continua hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you.
The Honorable Labuskaghni.
Honorable Chairperson, the death of Fidel Castro has been a global event, creating debate and discussions on the legacy of the former Cuban president and the ideals for which he stood. This debate in the NCOP today provides us with an unique opportunity to contribute to this discussion by reflecting on our own country, our values and principles, and what we stand for. Fidel Castro played a role in our painful history and has been duly acknowledged for this. But when considering this motion, we must not just stop there. We must look further and consider what he did in his own country. The truth, fellow members, is that Fidel Castro's reign in Cuba was the fundamental antithesis of the constitutional values that we love in South Africa. Mr. Castro was a dictator. He jailed or executed his opponents. He persecuted people on the basis of their sexual identity. There were no elections. If you spoke out against Castro, you were an enemy of the state. These are the very things which so many of our people fought against in South Africa. Fellow members, it is important that we consider all these facts, because if we don't...
Honorable Labuskaghni, please take your seat. Honorable Mukweli, you are on your feet. Honorable Labuskaghni, will you take a question? No, she's not prepared, ma'am. Please continue, ma'am. No, she's not prepared, Honorable Mukweli.
Fellow members, it is important that we consider all these facts, because if we don't and merely glance over the brutality, hatred, and fear, we make it easier for these own horrid values to return again. South Africa stands for democratic elections not tyranny. South Africa stands for freedom of expression and association, not fear and violence. And South Africa stands for the rights of all our people, not the persecution of people based on their identity. As a nation, we should never forget what we believe in, what values we strive and fight for. Let us use the death of Fidel Castro to recommit to our own democratic values, to our constitution, which respects the rights of all, and to the principles of freedom, dignity, and equality for all. Let us work hard to spread this message in other places around the world. Let it shape our foreign policy and animate every interaction we have. And let us share our own experiences of overcoming.
Honorable Honorable Mukweli, what are you standing on?
Modula Stilo, ke ne ke batla go bolella Sebui gore
Nyamma, ga
gore
kgona
ba
go
kgona go
mmolelela.
bua yana kajeko is because of the contribution that Fidel did to our country.
Ke a leboga, mamme ga o na
Must-
right
She
ya go
must never
mmolelela.
ever discredit that man. We are who we are because of him.
Honorable
Thank
Mukweli.
you.
Honorable
That was
Chairperson.
not a point of order. And we
I
don't
just-
have points of information in the House.
Chairperson, with
proceed.
with your permission, can I ask the member who tried to raise ask me a question, the question in saying, Honorable Member, I want you to think and think very carefully. Under the reign of Fidel Castro, if the EFF with the values they have at the moment will be able to be free in that country. Let us work hard to
Honorable
spread
Mukweli,
this
take your
message.
seat. Honorable Mukweli.
Let us work hard to spread this message in other places around the
Order.
world. Let it
Order.
shape our foreign policy and animate every interaction we have. And let us share our own experience of overcoming authoritarianism with the Cuban people so that they too can create
Honorable
a freedom-loving,
Labuskafne,
rights-based
I've got another
democracy.
member
I
on their
thank you.
feet. Honorable Koni, is that a point of order, ma'am?
Yes, Chairperson.
What's your point of order?
The member on the podium is howling. She's making noise instead of sending condolences to the progressive commandante. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. That was not a point of order. Honorable Labuskafne, have you finished? Thank you, ma'am. Honorable Manopole, you are next.
Tell them about your visit in Cuba.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chief Whip, delegates, special delegates. as
Honorable
well.
Manopole, please take your seat. Honorable Koni.
Ga se ka moya ope o masho, Chairperson, ke rela from Northern Cape to Northern Cape. Ke amogele mme as our NCOP ginger. Thank you.
That's not a point of order. Please continue, Honorable Manopole.
Ke a leboga Modula Stilo. As the ANC today, we join 11.2 million of Cubans, both in Cuba, across the world, whom they have lost a beacon of hope, a father, a friend, a giant gallant fighter, an icon of socialist revolutionary, an internationalist par excellence,
Can you come closer to the mic?
a former president of Cuba, together with billions of the working class and the poor who are marginalized, exploited, and kept in the darkness of poverty, inequality, and unemployment by the imperialism and monopoly capital. In expressing our sincere condolences to the family of Castro and the people of Cuba on passing away and the loss of El Comandante Fidel Castro. To borrow from the words of Che Guevara, I quote, "A true revolutionary is guided by the great feeling of love," close quote. Wish he had these people with outstanding features of genuine people's revolution. We also join the people of Africa, Guinea-Bissau, Congo, Angola, Namibia, and etc. As the ANC, we commemorate one of our true friends, a comrade in arms who played a significant role in defeat of apartheid. In particular, we reminded ourselves of the contribution made by his people in preparing and contributing towards arming and training, funding, and paying his even the highest price. Although deaths during the Battle of the Cudo-Konovara, in fighting and the liberation of our country. Today, the enemy of the
Honorable
socialists...
Manopole, please take your seat. Honorable Mukweli, you are on your feet.
Yeah, I want to check whether the member is aware that the party she is representing has betrayed the commandant by allowing capitalism in this country.
Honorable Mukweli, you did not ask whether the member wanted to take the question, and therefore the member, you had not granted you the permission to ask the question. Honorable Manopole, please proceed.
Today, the enemy of the socialist revolution believes it, like the DA member has spoken before, believes that it can draw certain conclusion from his death. Comrade Fidel was a master of warfare. He was an artist of guerrilla struggle, sound tactician, and he showed that in infinite number of times. However, now after his death, some people attempt to buff the truth of or the value of his concept. The revolutionary intellectual and internationalist may die, but he will not surely die. His conviction, which is dedicated to his life. The Cuban leadership is and will continue with his legacy to defend the revolution. That is true. That is true. There is no doubt about that. It shows his faith in his people, his faith in his ideas, his faith in the example. We fully appreciate the value of examples. We are absolutely convinced that many people will strive to live up his example, that people like him will emerge. It is easy to find people with all the virtue that, it is not easy to find people the virtue that we are combined with that of Comrade Fidel. As the ANC, we admire not only the intelligence, the person capable of performing at great time what he did, what he was doing, the very fact he is rising with a handful of men against the army who were trained by the capitalism and indoctrinated with greed and sent in by the imperialism remain its extraordinary masterstroke. As we search the pages of history, it is likely that we will find no other case in which the leader of such limited number of men had set about tasks of such importance. A case in which a leader in which such limited number of men had set out in fighting against such large located 8 miles away, such proof of confidence in himself, such confidence of these people, such confidence of faith of his men and his capacity can look for the pages of history like this, it will never be found. Today, the enemy believes that he has been defeated, his ideas are defeated. His socialist concept, his belief of nationalhood and its right to self-determination, they have failed to accomplish that over 306 times. They have attempted to assassinate him. They have attempted to invade Cuba. But what makes me to marvel is the Bay of the Pigs, where they defeated, and where they tried also to poison his favorite cigar, and also tried to poison this capsule. The death of the Comrade Fidel is indeed a hard blow, in a tremendous blow to all revolutionary movement across the world, because it deprives it without doubt of the most experienced and able leader of the historic epoch. But those who boasted on his death as a victory are mistaken. They are mistaken when they think that his death is the end of his ideas, that the end of his tactics, the end of his socialist construction concept, the end of his theory. Therefore, for the person who falls as a mortal person, as a person who faced bullets several times, and again, as a soldier, as a leader, as 1,000 times more able to those who wanted to overthrow progressive movement of Cuba. Even after disappearance of Soviet Union aid, after the collapse of which resulted hard times in Cuba known as a special period, the tight rationing of food, fuel, consumer food, people of Cuba did not succumb to the pressure of economic blockage. However, how should we as a revolutionary face this serious setback? We should face this loss. How should we face this loss? We want to argue that if Comrade Fidel could express an opinion in this point, he would give us an opinion expressed by his losing time friend and Comrade Sheikh Rovar when he wrote in his message of Tri-Continental Latin American Solidarity Conference. I quote, he said, "If death surprised me anyway, it will be welcome as long as his battle cry had reached a receptive ear. Another hand reach out will take up his rife." Close quote. As a new leaders emerge to all we will have learned from Fidel Castro that important things in the revolution, the important things the revolution caused and the important things is ideas, objective, sentiments, and virtues. And it is that field, that the field of ideas, the field of sentiment, the field of revolutionary virtue, field of intelligence, a part of the other virtues, we will feel the tremendous loss that his death has meant to the revolutionary movement of the world. This extraordinary character has made as a virtue that he really found, he stood and surpassed by any action. He has also been a visionary and intelligence and broad culture of profound thinker, the man of ideas and the man of action within the combined. If we wish to express and expect our leaders and our people of the world, we must say, without hesitation, they should be like El Comandante Fidel Castro. If we wish to want to say to our children to be educated, we must say it without hesitation to our children. We want them to be educated like El Comandante Fidel Castro. Therefore, as the ANC, we believe that our people are sensitive, grateful people who know how to honor the memory of the brave, that our people recognize those who have served them, which demonstrate the people's solidarity with the revolutionary struggle and how these people will rise and aloof and maintain the higher aloof revolutionary banners and revolutionary principle today. In this moment of remembrance, let us lift up our spirit with optimism of our future, with absolute optimism of final victory of our people, and say to Fidel, to the heroes and the heroines who fought and died for us in the Battle of Quito Navarra, hasta la vista. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable Ngwenya.
Whatever.
You are protected, ma'am. Don't concentrate on
Honorable
him.
Chair. Honorable Chair, special delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The economic freedom fighters are saddened by the passing away of the former president of Cuba, Commandant Fidel Castro Ruz, who has passed away late on Friday, 25th November 2016. Commandant Fidel Castro was an outstanding leader and world icon who, under the Cuban Communist Party government, made Cuba a great country that continued to contribute to the total liberation of the oppressed masses of the world despite illegal and inhumane sanctions. His refusal, Honorable Chair, to succumb to capitalism as a system that promotes greed and profit at the expense of people's development as a whole should be celebrated by all who love justice, peace, and equality for all in human race, and should inspire strength to continue the struggle for socialism. We all know that Commandant Fidel Castro's 90 years of existence touched the lives of many in the world, particularly socialist militants who are still fighting capitalism and imperialism. We pass revolutionary condolences to them as well, hoping and wishing revolutionary peace to their painful hearts. The passing of this commandant, Honorable Chair, is a loss to us in the African continent as well, for we benefited from his leadership and the revolution he led on behalf of his people.
This revolution, the Cuban Revolution, is the greatest human gift of the 20th century because through it and because of it, the people of the global South benefited from the example, the benevolence, the selflessness, and generosity of the Cuban people. After they inaugurated a socialist order, they did not focus only on their well-being, but continued in many instances to their own detriment to contribute to the freedoms of others in the world. Had it not been, Honorable Chairperson, for the Cuban presence in Africa, and in particular Angola, led by Commandant Castro, the history of Africa would have never been what it is now. And this is not only in debt us to the Cuban people, but makes us special friends with these beautiful people. Commandant Fidel Castro addressed our South African Parliament in 1998, where he encouraged us to be a model of more justice and more human future, to symbolize more independent and sovereign South Africa beyond the atrocities of colonial and apartheid past. When he addressed a mass rally called by the Cuban youth, students, and workers on the May Day of 2000, Commandant Castro argued that, I quote, "Revolution means to have sense of history. It is a change. It is changing everything that must be changed. It is full of equality and freedom. It is being treated and treating others like human beings. It is achieving emancipation by ourselves and through our own efforts. It is challenging powerful dominant forces from within and without both the social and national milieu. It is defending the values in which we believe and the cost of any sacrifice."
Honorable Ngwenya, please take your seat. Honorable Hatton.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Following the trend sent by my colleagues, I would like to know whether the honourable member would take a question on the issue she is now addressing.
Honorable Ngwenya, do you want to take a question?
I don't have the time now. He should know the history by now. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you, sir. Please proceed, ma'am.
As I was quoting Fidel Castro, our commandant, he says that revolution means unity. It is independence. It is fighting for our dreams of justice for Cuba and for the world, which is the foundation of our patriotism, our socialism, and our internationalism, close quote. This is what informs the basis for the EFF founding manifesto when it says, I quote, "EFF is guided by revolutionary internationalism and solidarity that defined the politics of the July 26 movement. The EFF will continue the struggle in the southern tip of the African continent to free our people from poverty and underdevelopment and from the shackles of capitalism." Honorable Chair, in his honor, we say long live the Cuban Revolution. Hasta la victoria siempre. May the spirit of Commandant Fidel Castro Ruz rest in perfect revolutionary peace. I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable Lomo. Order. Honorable Mukwele, what are you standing on?
Chair, I'm standing
Take
on
a
a
seat,
point of order.
Honorable Lomo, for a while. What point are you standing on, ma'am?
You know, Honorable Hatting is showing me videos where they use to kill our people. And it's on a very serious note, that video has chair. So ke kopa gore o bue le ene, a tlogele re bontsha those violent videos, because when we react to what he's doing, it's not gonna be right. So I'm appealing.
Thank you, ma'am. The point you are making. Honorable Hatting, are you showing members violent videos in the House?
I was showing the honourable member Fidel Castro's firing squads.
Okay. Order, members. Members, I have addressed this House before on the decency of condolences, on the need to reflect respect, not only to those who are departed, but to their people, their families. I think it is absolutely out of order Honorable Hatting, if you want to take issues with Fidel, do it outside this house. At this moment, you are not supposed to be even showing each other whatever pictures. So may I ask you to behave and give the chairperson the chance to introduce and allow the next speaker on the podium, the Honorable Dlomo.
Honorable Chair, Select Committee members present and honorable members, today marks the groundbreaking HIV vaccine trial that is started in 15 sites in our country. It is the world's first HIV vaccine looking into the efficacy of that product. This HTNV 702 study will establish whether this vaccine safely prevents the HIV infection among South African adults. The study is conducted as a collaboration amongst NIH, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the our own South African Medical Research Council. The whole world is waiting for the results. Ironically, they won't come early. But a small country with a big heart, like Cuba, does not have to grapple with the problems of HIV, TB, maternal deaths, infant mortality, under 5 mortality, because the policies that were put in place in that country in 1959 focused largely on health and education. Among the very first countries that President Nelson Mandela visited when he left prison in 1991 was Cuba. It was to take stock of the victories of our struggles, of the people of the world, while also reflecting on the future plans. The ANC has actually prioritized education and health, and we believe that it had an influence with the discussions that President Nelson Mandela had then with President Fidel Castro. Because we noticed that in 1994, the very first task that was given to Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the first Minister of Health in this country, was to go to Cuba and implement an agreement that had been realized from the discussions between late President Fidel Castro and President Nelson Mandela, where we were attempting to address the serious challenges in the production of medical doctors in our country. The collaboration in health field between South Africa and Cuba enabled South Africa to recruit doctors from Cuba, whilst also sending young aspirant doctors, students from our poor communities for medical training in Cuban universities. The South African medical schools were not yet ready to produce reasonable numbers of medical doctors, in particular within the context of the country's health demands. There are only 8 medical schools in the country with a population of 52 million. And in Cuba, there are 22 medical schools with a population of 11 million. This implies that Cuba trains more students with a better yield in any given time frame. Cuba invested on education and medical training, hence they have over 100,000 doctors, and 20,000 of those are practicing medicine outside Cuba, including being in our country. In order to supplement the number of medical doctors required, South Africa has therefore embarked on this very noble program of partnership with Cuba. And their training is primarily focused on primary health care, which is the main issue that we want to drive in this country through NHI. Furthermore, the target group of students that we send to Cuba are the young Black African males and females who come from previously disadvantaged communities, and therefore not only do they come back and become good doctors, but also they become breadwinners of families that otherwise would not have ever have doctors in their communities. From the commencement of this program, a total of 940 students have been to Cuba doing this training just from one province alone, that is KwaZulu-Natal. Our province constitutes the majority of the students that we have in Cuba, and there are 104 that have come back and now practicing in various hospitals, and 743 are still in Cuba practicing in there. On several visits that I've made to Cuba, I sat and asked the Cubans, but why are you doing these good things to us? And their response they've been to say, and I quote, "You are part of us. our origins are in Africa. We do it to ourselves when we do it to you. And therefore, it actually confirms what President Fidel Castro did, what he did in Cuito Valley. And I quote, among other things, that President Fidel Castro said, like many other imperialists that came here and did whatever they did, President Fidel Castro had this to say, and I quote, "We did not take back from Africa any gold or any diamonds, but we took bodies of our fallen soldiers to go and bury." Now, the department, therefore, will continue with its relationship with Cuba and will continue to benefit as we have done, because there are many and serious challenges. We have an aging population of doctors in our country, and we'll continue to need them. It is therefore imperative that scholars and activists reassert the importance of the Battle of Cuito Valley, not only for the sake of historical accuracy, but also to honor the memory of those who fought and died for the liberation of Southern Africa. Cuito Valley was the largest military confrontation on African soil since the Second World War allies in Northern Africa. It marked the beginning of the end of white minority domination in Southern Africa, the dismantling of the apartheid system, and the total liberation of Africa from European occupation. It shattered the myth of white supremacy that was the ideological foundation of the apartheid regime and the entire European colonial project. It was a profound demonstration of Pan-Africanism, what scholars largely call a reverse diaspora, as over 50,000 Cubans returned to the land of their ancestry to rid the continent of racist rule. Finally, it was a testament to international solidarity, as revolutionary Cuba always recognized a historic debt it owes Africa, sent its best of its best and materials to fight against apartheid, leaving itself vulnerable to attacks by the US, while expecting and receiving absolutely nothing in return for its sacrifice. In a speech to tens of thousands in Cuban soil that Honorable Mandela made in 1991, he had, among other things, this to say, I quote, "We have long wanted to visit your country and express many feelings that we have about the Cuban Revolution, about the role of Cuba in Africa, Southern Africa, and the world. The Cuban people hold a special place in the hearts of the people of Africa. The Cuban internationalists have made contributions to the African independence, freedoms, and justice unparalleled to the principles and selfless character. Your crushing defeat on the racist army at Cuito Valley was a victory for the whole of Africa." Close quotation. Today, visitors to Freedom Park in Pretoria will see included on the list of anti-apartheid martyrs the names of over 2,000 Cubans who lost their lives in Angola. There is no greater authority than those who suffered under apartheid, including Mandela himself, on the question of the significance of the Battle of Cuito Valley. We have learned, therefore, greatly that such a great leader, a great giant, should actually be commemorated, and his life actually has been a life that we all need to commend and say, "Viva Comrade Fidel Castro, viva Cuba." I thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Khaila. The Honorable Mokwele. Please take your seat, Kangani. Honorable Mokwele, what is your point of order?
Without wasting Honorable Gayla's time, I want you to take note that the white DA members of this House are out. That is a clear indication that they don't respect the El Commandant, as I might put it. It must be noted that they are violating, or they don't respect the democracy that we are fighting for.
Honorable Mokwele, please take your seat, sir. That's not a point of order. The sentiments are registered, but it is not a point of order. Honorable Julius, what are you rising on?
Thank you, Chairperson. Exactly on the sentiments.
Yes, please
On
then
the
take your seat.
sentiments, I don't think you can guess what the sentiments are. You
Please
cannot-
take your seat. Whatever you are going to say on a point of order that I have said is not a point of order will be out of order. Please accept that I have ruled on Honorable Mukwili and we are proceeding. The Honorable Khaila is on the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. The United Democratic Movement joined the people of the world in mourning and celebrating the life of a remarkable and indomitable revolutionary of our time. Indeed, Fidel Castro was sincere and a reliable friend of the poorest of the poor world over. His theory and action was a reflector of rare creature who embodied the high ideals of a true politician, a true round citizen, a patriot and a leader of the helpless from birth to death. Born from a wealthy family, but chose to dedicate his life fighting for the most impoverished citizen of the world. His well-recorded and unparalleled contribution towards the liberation and the improvement of lives of the many neglected in the world are well recorded in the history of the nation. He, together with many other revolutionaries, defeated the world that is dominated by a cruel system of capitalism. The world, and in particular the poor, has lost the wisest revolutionary of the 20th century. It is not anyone that defeats dictatorship that is supported and assisted by the imperialist regimes led by the USA with only 20 men. It defeated illiteracy, reduced infant mortality rate from 42% to 44%. In short, every citizen has access to quality health with a high rate of doctors per capita in the world. He made his country to have a population whose life expectancy was 79 years from birth. Fidel Castro supplied medical doctors to many poor citizens of the world with first-class training and expertise. He ended child malnutrition. He got 100% of schooling, created a country where no single child will sleep on the street, and created a country which fulfills the ecological sustainability. Indeed, Fidel Castro has left a legacy of true revolutionary and a leader that all who are left behind should emulate. Aba bangazange baye, lucky chairperson. I went to Cuba in 2006. Cuba was poor, but one thing about Cuba, Cuba's land and economy belongs to the Cubans. Secondly, they are the best agriculture in the world. Hard-working people, the best that you can ever. I would, for that matter, if I could, I would have lived in Cuba because it was well governed. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Kaula. We are protected, Tatu Khaila. We are protected.
The IFP joins the millions of the people of goodwill, citizens of the world, in expressing our sincere condolence to the people of Cuba on the passing away of the leader, Fidel Castro. Born in 1926 and passing away in 2016 at the age of 90, Fidel Castro made a memorable contribution to the people of Cuba and the world. There is a saying in English, and I quote unquote, that you can't be everything to every man. This fits perfectly well in relation to who Fidel Castro was to many in the world. As a revolutionary, a freedom fighter, he made friends, comrades, and revolutionaries with many like-minded leaders and supporters around the world. In the IFP, we acknowledge that we may not have subscribed to his ideals, but value that his contribution in many ways also assisted some of our brothers and sisters in the country and the continent in our own struggle for liberation in South Africa. The IFP has always acknowledged that there may be many routes leading to a particular destination. Therefore, Wrangling about which route is the best instead of looking at arriving at the destination is of secondary importance. Fidel Castro provides but one good example to many in the world, and that is, if you believe in something, stand by it and fight for it to the bitter end. Fidel Castro so much believed in his revolutionary and communist ideals that no measure of European and American supremacy was able to shut him down. Right at the doorstep of the USA, he was able to resist American influence, which he believed was not good for his country, and stood by his conviction up to the bitter end. The people of South Africa in general, and KwaZulu-Natal in particular, have benefited from the health programs of Cuba designed by Fidel Castro. KwaZulu-Natal has many young doctors in our hospitals today who are a product of the Cuba KZN program. One thing, Chairperson, that the Honorable Dr. Dlomo, my colleague, did not say was that the programs he was talking about started when the IFP was in control of KwaZulu-Natal. In isiZulu we say, abantu abayi ngancane bengemanzi. This is one aspect of democracy that we still need to instill to this House, to South Africa, and elsewhere. In the spirit of Ubuntu, a principle firmly grounded in the principles of the IFP, we mourn the loss of a human being and a leader in Fidel Castro. He has many students of revolution that he created amongst many leaders in our country. That in itself is an influence and a contribution that cannot be overlooked. Where he stands out as a giant is in actually practicing what he was preaching. He would not a single day have been found preaching socialism, denouncing capitalism, yet living the life of a capitalist. The leader of the IFP, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is a product of the ANC, mentored by the likes of Inkosi Albert Luthuli, Prixika Isaka Seme, and others. That is why in founding the IFP, he consulted and borrowed from leaders like Julius Nyerere, a socialist, Hastings Banda, another socialist, and others. Therefore, in a way, Commandant Castro was at a distance, but not very far from the ideals that founded the IFP. We therefore say, rest in peace, Leader Castro. Thank you.
Siyabonga. The Honorable Pakis.
Honorable Chair, honorable members of Parliament, we stand here to celebrate a well-lived life of a genuine revolutionary, a symbol of the working class internationalism, a symbol of a practical and active solidarity with the world-oppressed nations, a leader who has survived 368 assassination attempts by US CIA. His legacy will be with us forever. His example ought to be emulated by all those who regard themselves as revolutionaries. The example of moral integrity and authority, the example of living with strength of conviction and maintenance of principle, and a firm belief in the relevance of socialism. Fidel Castro, the commander-in-chief, he denounced racism, but propagated human race. Now, we need to send a message to the DA. Castro represented a total liberation of the people, black and white. He assisted, contributed to our continent. For the fact that DA leave the house when we celebrate and give our last tribute to this great leader of the working class internationalism, it shows and gives an expression that they remain fervent believers of the the apartheid system and all its vices.
Honorable Pakis, please take your seat. Honorable Julius.
Thank you, Chair. On a point of order,
Yes, yes, sir.
I
Order.
mentioned it earlier. No speculation can be made that the DA left because of this. There are many ANC members
Honorable
not
Julius,
here,
what
and on
is your point
any
of
day,
order?
There are about 20 ANC members not here, also on important dates.
Okay.
Honorable Pakis cannot make assumptions.
Okay, okay. Honorable Julius, your point is sustained. Please continue.
Chairperson, as
Please
long
continue.
as I'm a member of this House, I shall constantly assert that within DA, you will find incorrigible racist elements. Fidel Castro represented an abhorrence against US-led imperialism and all its vices. He was the voice of the poor and underdeveloped nations and exploited. He challenged disruptive caprices of imperialism. Under his leadership, the Cuban Revolution was defended and its sovereignty through its unity of the great masses. The Cubans understood their international obligation to help, assist, contribute with their skills and variety of expertise, and to contribute to all reviled nations of underdeveloped world. The Cuban masses never experienced and never suffered from the profligacy of his leadership and engorged vampire elite. In the face and the midst of inhuman economic blockade foisted by US and its allies, he defeated and defended the cause of socialism and never compromised the principle. This was a communist leader with resilience who defied calamitous rule of monopoly capitalism, the system that destroys our lives, the system that destroys the scores of people, the system that destroys our environment and dignity of our people, the system which is ruthless, nefarious system that consigns workers and demean their human dignity. Fidel Castro extolled not the system and its sordid values and cultural knowledge. This international figure of its own category and autodidact intellectual struggled for egalitarian decency and social justice and defeated despotic dictator in Cuba. He constantly criticized nebulous blind laws of market fundamentalism. In the midst of this ideological climate, he remained sanguine about the future of socialism as a rational system and human and egalitarian social system with progressive moral virtues. Its impact and impressions in Cuba will not have any ephemeral effects in the lives of ordinary people. We want to say, let the red flag under which we fight be the sacred cause of liberation of humanity. We honor his indomitable service to the cause of the revolution and his selfless sacrifice. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Order, members. It is interesting that order amongst us here, there are 4 of us who are probably still alive because of Fidel. I do know that when Novo Katengo was attacked and poisoned, that I was one of the survivors. Simply because Fidel flew in a plane full of doctors to save us from the poison. I am a multi-party Democrat, not a communist. I believe, even though I will always owe my life to those Cuban doctors. I believe that when I look at Honorable Mlambo, I know that his first uniform was from the Cubans. I believe that I do know that we are what we are. Amongst us very straight, amongst us very crooked. That in fact, it was the contribution of Cuba to the liberation struggle of this country. That whatever we may want to say, that we must give credence, respect, a good salute to the commander of the people. That concludes the debate, honorable members. But I do have to deal with a little matter which arose during the day, but which was also brought to my attention last week. And it is that during the sitting on the 18th of November 2016 in the Eastern Cape, a member of our house was heard making allegations of rape against a member who was at the podium at that time debating. Now, due to the seriousness of the remarks and the implications on the decorum of the House, I have decided to refer this matter to the Standing Committee in terms of Section 12(1) of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and the Provincial Legislatures Act of 2004. The committee should inquire into the matter and present its report in terms of Section 12(3) of that Act. In that way, we will get to, one, deal with issues of the decorum of the House, deal with the impugning of the member who was on the panel, and also deal with the veracity or not of that allegations. Honorable members, I thank you very much for your patience today. The business of the day is done. Please remain standing as we leave the chamber. The House is adjourned.